Hi guys, welcome back to the Art of Server. So today is a follow-on video of the ThinkStation P620. I've got here a USB drive that has my Fedora 33 workstation installer, and we're going to try to install Fedora Workstation Linux on this Lenovo P620. If you've just come across my channel and you're interested in the ThinkStation P620, I recommend that you go back and look at the first video that I made a couple of weeks ago, where basically I take a look inside this machine and we kind of just take a basic overview of the hardware itself. Today we're going to try to install Fedora Linux on this machine and see how that goes. So I'm going to go ahead and plug this USB drive into the machine. And earlier, let me also explain off screen. I actually installed a second M.2 SSD. So if you remember from the first video, there are two M.2 slots in the P620. One came with a 1 terabyte Samsung PM981A drive. I put in a PM981A 256 gigabyte drive of my own, and that's where I'm going to install Linux, or the Fedora 33 workstation Linux. I'm leaving the Windows installation alone because I didn't want to overwrite that just in case I need that. It's already set up with all the drivers, so I didn't want to bother messing that up. So anyway, I've got that already installed, and earlier I looked up the key sequence to invoke the boot menu, and that I believe is F12. And so we're going to go ahead and start this machine up. And I'm going to wait for the Lenovo logo to pop up, and then we'll hit F12 and get into the boot menu. Alright, so I'm holding down F12. Actually, I'm pressing it repeatedly. Alright, there we go. So there is our boot menu. So my information was correct. Alright, so let's see. That's the 1 terabyte drive that has the Windows installation on it. We have network booting ability. And then here's the USB drive, so I'm going to click on that. And here we are with the Fedora 33 installer. Let's go ahead and start the installation. Alright, hopefully you guys can hear this, but the machine's gotten a lot quieter. So this machine is very loud, as I mentioned last time. It's very loud when you first start it up. I think the fans just spin up to 100%. But as it enters the operating system, it does calm down, and it's relatively quiet. It's not completely silent. Somebody had asked me, sent me a message after the first video asking me if it was a very quiet machine, and it's not 100% silent, but it doesn't, like at this, what the noise level that it's generating right now doesn't bother me having it right next to me. Now, that's also kind of subjective because I've been around a lot of computers and network hardware that's really loud. So from my perspective, this might be tolerable. For somebody who's maybe a little bit more sensitive, it is definitely not completely silent, so keep that in mind. At some point, maybe I'll pull out the decibel meter and we'll measure that so we can give a more objective number to the noise level. Alright, so I've got English. Let's go ahead and click on continue. Alright, so let me pick the installation disk. So as you can see here, there's that USB drive with the installer. That's the 1 terabyte drive where Windows is installed, and this is my 256 gigabyte drive. So I want to install it on that. I'll pick custom. I don't think I need to do anything here special here, but let me just go ahead and pick the automatic setup. I just want to kind of take a look at it. Oh, you know what? This is something that's kind of neat I want to point out. In Fedora 33, the default file system is BTRFS or Btrfs. And that's a little bit like ZFS. It basically has a lot of the same kind of concepts. And so you can see that right here, the root file system and the home /home file system is exactly the same size. And that's because they're coming out of the same disk pool. And so just like ZFS, you don't have to pre-allocate space like in traditional file systems where you have to create a file system with so many gigabytes, and you know that would be reserved for that file system. Then the rest of the space would be reserved for other file systems. Basically, it's all drawing from the same pool, And so these two file systems you don't have to predetermine how much space you need in these file systems, because they're just pulling from the same pool. So that's kind of a nice and neat feature in Fedora 33, where they've finally adopted BTRFS. Honestly, I wish the whole licensing issue with Linux and ZFS wasn't such a problem, that ZFS could be more widely adopted, but unfortunately, it is the way it is. But this is kind of cool that you no longer have to pre-allocate how much space you want for the root file system versus your /home. Most people will put most of the stuff in /home, but then if you have a fairly large desktop OS installation where you're installing a lot of programs, you might need more space here. And prior to Fedora 33 and the adoption of BTRFS, you would have to pre-allocate and kind of choose a size. And although you could resize things later on if you enabled volume management, it was just kind of a pain in the butt. So this is kind of cool. All right, so anyway, I'm going to go ahead and just go ahead with the default setting here. I'm going to click on done. All right, accept changes. Okay, installation source, error setting up base repository. What's going on here? Okay, trying to get close to the screen so hopefully you guys can see this, but it looks like I have no network devices available. What is that about? So the system is not detecting the onboard NIC. Okay, so all right, I'm gonna go to command shell. So I'm gonna press Alt F2 to get myself a shell here. So I know this print is really small. I don't have another way to record this screen, so I hope you guys can see this. But I'm on the shell, and let's start with the lspci and look for some network devices. Okay, so the network controller is there. It's a Aquantia Corp AQC107 chipset. So that's the onboard Ethernet controller, and I can see it. The address, the PCI address is 01:00.0. So let's look up some information on that. 01:00.0 VV. Okay, so not seeing any. Okay, so I'm seeing the driver module is called Atlantic. Let's look at the kernel messages for Atlantic. Let's see what, because it looks like the kernel is kernel module. Well, it does not say kernel module in use. So it's identified the kernel module that it should be using for this, which means that the kernel has a network driver for this card, but it's not loading correctly, which explains why the network interface is not available. All right, so okay, so the driver says, hopefully you guys can see that. I'll read it to you. It says Atlantic: bad FW firmware version detected 402001D. Probe of that address failed with error -95. So it seems like the current firmware version of that Aquantia AQC107 chip is not playing well with the driver that's in Linux right now. Okay, well, I've got a couple of options. I could see if there's a firmware update for this network card and try to apply it in Windows, since I still have that Windows installation. Or if that doesn't work out, so let me try that first. I'm going to go ahead and try the firmware update to see if this problem goes away. And if that doesn't work out, I'm going to have to install a third-party network card. So I have a couple of like 1 gigabit NICs somewhere in a bin. So I'll probably grab one of those if that's what's necessary to get this installed. But okay, so yeah, this is kind of a surprise. I kind of wonder what's wrong with this firmware that the driver actually refuses to load. I've never seen that before. Usually it'll load, maybe issue a warning or something, saying like the current firmware version has known bug or something like that. But just outright refusing to load is kind of surprising, actually. So, well, anyway, all right, let's go ahead and reboot into Windows, and I'm going to try to find a firmware update. So let's remember that 402001D. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and reboot this. I'm going to pull the USB drive out after this thing. All right. Okay. Well, nothing's ever easy, is it? All right, let's just wait for Windows to boot up. It shouldn't take too long. All right, there's Windows booted up in a split second. Gosh, this thing boots up so fast, it's amazing. I mean, I'm sure that's mostly because of the really fast SSD in there, but yeah, it's amazing. All right, let's go to Lenovo.com. I know that the network works in Windows because last time when we fired up, we were able to search the web from here. All right, so let's go to Lenovo.com. All right, where do I go for maybe resources? No, customer support, technical support. I just want downloads. What is this thing? No. Okay. Gosh, that's annoying. I don't know what you guys think, but you know, ever since that law passed where now they have to prompt you for all the cookies, like, I wish they would just default to the minimum and then, you know, have a little thing on the side that says, you know, do you want us to customize your experience or something, instead of having to, anyway, off topic here. Let me go to technical support. I'm not really sure. Oh, here. All right. Support drivers and software. Let's see. ThinkStation P620. All right. Automatic driver update. Do I want to do that? Let me just download the manual thing first, because if that takes too long, I'm just mostly interested in the network. Okay, here's networking wireless. No, networking LAN. Here we go. All right, so we have Ethernet driver. I don't care about the driver firmware. Here's the firmware. Okay, and we have version 4.2.32. Says critical. That looks like it might be, you know, earlier was like what, 4001, so I'm guessing that maybe like 4.01 or something like that. So okay, I'm gonna go ahead and let me download the read. Oh, all right, let's save this on my desktop so I can read it later. And all right, let me go download. Okay, show in folder. Okay, this is, I wanted to see it in downloads. Okay, so this looks like a zip file, right? Yeah, this is the other thing I don't get. Why do people get rid of file extensions? That really bothers me. I don't know why that's the default choice these days. Sorry guys, I'm not really used to Windows, so little things like this kind of bother me because I'm just not used to it, but sure, for people who are familiar with this, not a big deal. Okay, let's extract all. Sure. Okay. So there's some executables. I don't know what they are, but let's go look at that README file. Can I? Okay, notepad's here. Good. All right, what do I need to do to apply this update manually? Oh, you know what? We're gonna do the automatic thing too. So let's see if that does anything. Oh, that's just a driver. Drivers and yeah. Okay. You know what? Let me skip that. Forget that. Let's just apply this firmware update. To update manually, unzip, which I did. run CMD as administrator. So let's see, CMD run as administrator. Yes. Okay. Where is the users? Sorry. Downloads maybe? No, it's not default. So Lenovo maybe? Nope, that's documents. I need downloads. Alright, there yeah. Marvel. Okay, so there's the directory. So what do I have to do? CD into the dash directory? I don't know. Okay, I don't understand this, but it looks like there's another file I need to uncompress, so let me just go ahead and do that. So I got to uncompress alt flash update, I think. So let me just go ahead and do that. Okay, so there's that file. Alt. Wait, AT. Okay. So those are the files right there, I think, that I need to run. So I need to run this atl flash update.exe-s. Okay, atl flash update-s. Let's hope this works. Alright guys, let's see if this will update the firmware. So existing firmware is 4.2.29. It's going to update to 4.2.32. That's not really a big difference. But, well, let's see what happens here. Okay, restarting device driver, update complete. Okay, well, I mean, that looks like it did the job. Okay, I guess I'm gonna reboot, and we're gonna try that Fedora install again, see if the Linux driver will load correctly. So let me go ahead and close all these out. Alright, so let's restart. Alright, I'm gonna put the USB drive back in, wait for this to restart. Alright, Lenovo, I'm hitting the F12 button. Let's get the boot menu. Alright, and we're going to go back to the USB boot disk and install Fedora 33. Let's hope this works out better. Alright, English, click on continue. And still no network devices. Well, that's disappointing. Let me Alt F2, get in the shell again. I don't remember what the address was. Was it 01? Let's look for this again. Yeah, it was 01. Okay, so well, actually I already know the driver is called Atlantic. So it says bad firmware version detected 40.200.20. So there was definitely a firmware update to the Aquantia 10 gig NIC, but the Linux driver is still claiming that this is a bad firmware version that it doesn't want to work with. And I'm guessing, yeah, so there's no network interface. Alright guys, unfortunately I think we're going to have to resort to adding a third-party NIC, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the camera here. I'll go install, I probably have some Intel NIC somewhere, I'm going to install one of those cards, and then we'll proceed with the installation. So, but anyway, this is something, I guess, if you're looking at getting one of these machines and you want to install Linux, this is maybe something you want to consider. This could be particular to the version, the kernel version that is with Fedora 33, which, by the way, is 5.8.15. Other versions of the kernel might have a different driver that maybe works with the older version of the so-called bad firmware. I don't know. But anyway, this is something to consider, that basically the onboard NIC may not work for you if you are planning to use this machine with Linux. It'll be interesting because I think Lenovo offers this machine also with Ubuntu. I'll have to double check that. Don't quote me on that, but I think, of course, their primary selling audience is Windows, but I do believe they offer a Linux option to this, and I just kind of wonder what they do to get this to work. But anyway, for now, just to move forward, I'm going to go install a add-on NIC, and we'll switch the cable over to that NIC and proceed forward that way. All right, guys, I'm back. I just installed a quad-port Intel NIC in here, so we're going to try this again. Let's power it on. Now, good news was that, again, one of the reasons why I love workstation machines is that they're very, very easy to work with. So I literally just pulled the panel up, removed that thing, the little bracket, the plastic bracket that held on to the PCI slots, removed this, plugged the card in, completely 100% toolless, did not need a screwdriver at all. So again, one of the reasons why I love these workstation machines, just because there's a lot of mechanical engineering that goes into them. So anyway, let's hope that we'll be able to get this Fedora Workstation Linux installation moving forward now with the Intel NIC in place. Smashing F12 right now, and boot the installer. All right, install Fedora 33. Okay, we're gonna click on continue here. All right, so it looks like we have a network connection this time. Look at that. All right. Hopefully that focuses for you guys. But all right, we'll have to repeat what we did earlier. Let's go ahead and set this up. All right, so again, same file system layout. Oh, you know what? Something I want to do here. It creates the volume group Fedora_Fedora. Not sure why it does that, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to change it to Fedora_system. So that just makes more sense to me. And this is the UEFI partition. This is the boot partition with the ext4, which I guess it will be fine. And the rest is BTRFS. So all right, let's go ahead and click done. Accept changes. And installation source, well, closest mirror, that's fine. Okay, so software selection. So usually I like to pick the Mate or Mate desktop, however you want to say it. And let's see what other packages would be potentially useful for what we're doing. Since we have a very powerful graphics card, let me put Compiz and some Mate applications. Administration tools sounds interesting or potentially useful. Editors, games and entertainment. I don't know what kind of games are going to come with this. So, neuron modeling simulators. That sounds like something that would be interesting for this machine, considering the RTX8000 in there, but I don't even know how to use those, so I'm just going to skip that. All right, so let's go ahead and click done. And everything else I think is okay. Let me set a password here. user account. All right, let's begin installation. So this should go fairly quickly. I'll tell you what, guys, I'm going to actually switch over to the other cameras, just shooting the screen. That way you'll get kind of a better perspective than me wearing the head cam right now. It's probably going to move a lot. So let me go ahead and do that. Alright guys, looks like the installation is done. I'm going to go ahead and click reboot now. And I'm going to pull out the USB drive. Alright, so I got into the system menu here, and I'm going to change the boot device. Since we have both the Windows and the since we have both Windows and Linux installed on this thing, primarily I wanted to boot up the Linux. So let's go in here. Let's see. How do I change? Is it plus? Okay, so I'll put my Samsung with Fedora on top of Windows, and that should do the trick. Alright, so save and exit is F10. And save and reset, yes. Alright, so we're at the login prompt. I will log in as myself. Alright guys, hey, I'm noticing that the other camera doesn't seem to be focusing well on the screen, and since now that I'm in Linux, I can probably use a screen recorder. I'm going to go get my other mic and plug everything in, and I'm going to switch over to the screen recorder, and hopefully that'll allow you guys to better see the screen here. But basically it looks like the NIC is working now. So anyway, I'll talk about that more once I get the screen recorder set up. So I'm going to stop the recording here for now and then get set up to do a screen recording with my mic. Hey guys, so alright, I'm back here at the Lenovo P620, and I'm booted up into Fedora 33 Workstation. This has actually been about 2.5 hours since the last segment, and the reason is that I've had all sorts of issues since then. And so anyway, just to give you an idea, and this might be important for anybody who's looking to use this machine with Linux, and in particular a USB mic, and more specifically a Blue Yeti mic. So I have myself a Blue Yeti mic. I got this a few months ago, and in hopes of making the video quality better when I'm doing on-screen recordings. And that mic works fine in the main workstation that I use for video editing. It also works fine on a different workstation. Actually, you guys have probably seen it, the Dell T7910. So I plugged into that machine, which is the T7910, which is also running Fedora 33, by the way, and it works perfectly fine. On my main workstation, which runs an older version of Fedora, I don't update that as aggressively because I need it to be stable. That has Fedora 32, and the Blue Yeti works fine. When I plug it into this machine, however, it doesn't seem to get recognized by the Pulse Audio subsystem. It does detect it as a USB device, but Pulse Audio subsystem will not detect it. And I thought maybe it might be something specific to Fedora 33, but when I tried it on the T7910, which also has Fedora 33, it worked just fine. So there may be some sort of USB driver issue going on here that's specific to this hardware and Fedora, you know, that combination of. So yeah, for anybody who's planning to use this machine for audio work, and you're going to use, you know, Fedora Workstation or some sort of Linux, there might be an audio problem with, you know, USB mics, or maybe more specifically the Blue Yeti mic. I'm not really sure. I think it might be just a USB mic issue. So anyway, I just want to bring that to your attention. I've had all sorts of problems trying to get that to work, and then along the way, the camera that I usually wear on my head for this POV perspective died, in the middle of doing all the stuff, so I had to go get another camera. And anyway, all right, enough about that. Let's move on. I just want to show you a couple of things. Obviously, we have Fedora 33 working and installed now. Now, one thing I wanted to point out, if you see here on the kilowatt, it's reading 194 watts, and this is at idle. So the machine just booted up and it's not really doing anything at all right now. So if I run htop, you'll see that for the most part, it's idle. And it's idling at 194 watts-ish. So if you recall from the first video running Windows 10, the idle, well, it kind of jumped around a lot from somewhere like 90 to 180 watts. This is very constant and consistent at 193 watts or so. So I don't know why that is, but yeah, so it might be that the Linux kernel is not that great with power management with the AMD Threadripper stuff yet. So there may be some room for improvement there in terms of energy efficiency. But right now, this machine is idling at about 194 watts, which is quite a bit higher than what we saw early in the previous video with Windows 10. All right, so anyway, I'm going to switch over to the screen recorder. The audio will be captured with the camera that's on my head right now. So I'll mix these in together in editing. I was hoping to get the Blue Yeti mic set up so that I could capture the audio and video, the screen recording video together, but I'll just have to make do with what I can do right now. So let me go ahead and turn on the screen recorder. Okay guys, so I got the screen recorder running, and so here we have a terminal. I've already logged in as root. One thing I wanted to point out that I thought was really interesting is that if I do NMCLI device, so this will show me all my network devices. I have 5 network interfaces. So remember, I put in a quad port Intel 1 gigabit NIC in order to overcome the installation problem that was not recognizing the Aquantia 10 gig network port, the one that's on board in the P620. Well, apparently after the installation completed, it has no problems with it. So I don't really understand what that's about. Maybe the kernel that's used for the installation of Fedora 33 has a driver that just is very specific, or it's just refusing. Remember, it said it thought it had bad firmware, or detected bad firmware and would not load itself. So I haven't changed the firmware since, other than the upgrade, the firmware update that I showed you at the beginning of this video. And so, yeah, somehow it's working fine now, I think. At least, well, I haven't plugged it in, so let me kind of show you something here. All right, so I'll grep for Atlantic, and you'll see that the driver renamed the interface from ETH0 to ENP1 S0, which is this interface, which is not currently plugged in. So I'm actually curious to see what happens if I unplug the cable from the Intel NIC and plug it into the onboard NIC right now. So that's what I'm going to try to do right now. All right, so I've unplugged the Ethernet cable from the Intel NIC, and I've now plugged it into the onboard NIC, and it works. So yeah, let's see if we can S0. So yeah, it picked up a dynamic DHCP address, no problem. That means it's working. Let's see, I can probably Google or do an NS lookup on Google, no problem. Okay, so yeah, the onboard NIC problem seems to be specific to the kernel of the installation media. And now that I have the full install of Fedora 33 with all the updates, it doesn't seem to be a problem anymore. Perhaps regardless of whatever firmware was on that NIC. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to revert the firmware to confirm that, but in any case, the onboard NIC seems to be working post-installation when the updates are applied. So anyway, that's good news that there weren't any more complications with the onboard NIC, so I can probably remove that Intel quad port and just go ahead and continue using the onboard NIC. So yeah, anyway, I wanted to point that out. And yeah, now we're seeing idle power at about 230. So it's gone up a little bit. Not really sure why. Yeah, so I mean, either way, definitely with Fedora Linux, this P620 is idling quite a bit higher than with Windows 10. So that might change perhaps with a kernel update. I'm not really sure, but anyway, wanted to point that out. Now, in the last video, someone said, hey, can you do a lspci and show us everything that is on this machine? And so here's lspci. All right, so there you have it. There you go. No, I'm just kidding. All right, I will put this in a file for you, and I will upload that file to my website and give you a link in the video description to go check out that file if you want to see this content here. All right, so anyway, okay, so one last thing I do want to do is install the Nvidia drivers. So I've already got the RPM Fusion. Let's see, I think I do at least. I remember having, yeah, the RPM Fusion repositories already installed. I had to enable that in order to get the screen recorder installed. So in order to get the Nvidia drivers installed, I'll just do a DNF install akmod, akmod Nvidia. Okay. So we'll go ahead and install this. I'll also run htop on the other terminal here. At some point it's going to have to build the driver package here. Oh, I guess I need to answer yes. Okay, so let's see if the driver has been installed. Yep. So there is the driver, and it went extremely quickly. So if we go ahead and reboot at this point, we should load up with the Nvidia driver. And so let's go ahead and do that. All right, so we're booted up here. Let's log in. And let's confirm that we have the Nvidia driver running. So let me just run X server settings, and nothing's popping up. Wait a second. All right, so let me find the address of the RTX8000 61. Okay, so, I don't know if you guys can see that, but it looks like the open source Nouveau driver is still loading. It does recognize that there is an Nvidia driver, but it's loading the open source one instead. Okay, so let's do a dmessage grep Nvidia. Oops. Okay. That's interesting. Loading of unsigned module is rejected. So the Nvidia driver, okay, yeah. So this is secure boot blocking us from loading that driver, I think. All right, so we're gonna have to disable secure boot in order to load this driver. All right, let me reboot, and we're gonna get into the UEFI BIOS menu. All right, I'm holding down the F1 button, or pressing it rather. All right, so here we are in the menu. All right, I don't need that. Let's go, I think, under security. Let's see, where is secure boot? Secure boot. Okay, here we are, secure boot. And yeah, so that's enabled. That's probably what's preventing us from loading the Nvidia driver. So let's go ahead and disable that. And then we'll exit, save changes. Yes. Alright, so let's boot up Fedora 33 again, and hopefully this time the Nvidia driver will load properly. Alright. And alright, let's see if this works now. I'm going to launch the Nvidia settings program. Ah, there we go. So yeah, that was it. So basically secure boot was preventing us from loading the native Nvidia driver. And yeah, there we have it. Alright, so we've got Fedora 33 installed. We've got the Nvidia, the native Nvidia driver running. And oh, wait a second. Hey, check this out. Hold on. Okay. Look at that. We have idle now at about 80, well, even 70, 77. Well, it's hovering around. So that's really interesting. So earlier, when we saw the higher idle power consumption, that was with the open source driver. And I think now that I'm running the Nvidia driver, let's see what power maximum. Yeah, so this is able to control the GPU's power levels. And so what we were probably seeing earlier was not so much the power management of the Threadripper Pro processor. I think it was probably the Nvidia driver or the open source Nouveau driver not doing a good job at doing power management on the graphics card, on the GPU. And so now that we have the proper Nvidia driver, you can see that the idle power here is comparable to what we saw last time in Windows. Yeah, okay, so that's actually great news. That's actually really awesome. I was thinking we needed some sort of kernel update or something like that, but it looks like the kernel itself is fine. It's really the power consumption that we saw earlier, the higher power consumption was really due to the video card driver. And so once we switched over to the Nvidia driver, we're seeing idle power comparable to what we saw in Windows last time. So okay, that's something I just learned. So I didn't realize that was what was causing the higher idle power. All right, guys, so that's going to be it for today. This video has taken quite a while to do, and there's just been a lot of events that happened along the way, so I think this is going to be long enough for this video. In the next videos, I'm going to run some benchmarks, and by the way, in the first video you saw that we only had 2 DIMMs in this machine. I contacted Lenovo and I said, hey, you know, this machine being an 8-channel CPU, wouldn't it be better if we had, you know, more memory? And so they sent me some memory. So now we actually have 128 gigabytes of memory with 16 gigabyte DIMMs in all channels. And so I'm going to run the benchmarks next time with those with that memory installed, and then we're going to look at storage subsystem. I've also asked to see if I could evaluate the quad M.2 card. I don't know if I will be able to get that. If not, I do have a PCIe Gen 3 version of that. Not a Lenovo specific branded one, but it was a generic, I think, a gigabyte one. And so I may try that in this machine and also try out the PCIe bifurcation and see how that works, if automatic mode works or not, or if we have to do it manually. All right, guys, so that's all we have for today. Fedora 33 is installed. We're ready to go. We've got the Nvidia driver ready to go, and ran into a couple of hardware problems along the way. The onboard Aquantia network card did not work during the installation, but post-installation with all the updates, it seems to be working just fine. And actually the firmware update I performed earlier at the beginning of this video probably might not have been necessary. I don't know for sure, but I'm not going to roll back the firmware right now in order to test that out. And that update did say it was a critical update, so you know, it can't hurt to have that. Having a lot of problems with the USB mic, especially in particular my Blue Yeti mic is not working with this machine for some reason. I don't really understand what's causing it necessarily. Pulse audio is basically not picking up the USB mic, although the USB device is being detected. So there's potentially some issues, although I'm not really sure if it's software specific. or it could be a software driver type of issue, because on a T7910 with the same version of Fedora, that Blue Yeti might work just fine. So yeah, I'm not really sure what's going on there, but just something to note if anybody is going to be was thinking picking up a P620 to run Linux and might be using a USB mic, you might want to verify and confirm that that stuff is going to work for you. At least it did not work for me. And now that we have the Nvidia driver installed, we're seeing idle power comparable to what we saw in Windows. And so definitely the open source Nvidia driver, or the nouveau driver, definitely did not do a good job at power management on the GPU here. And so that was something we learned along the way. Alright guys, that's it for today. Hope you liked this video. If you did, make sure to hit that like button, and if you'd like to see more videos on P620, be sure to subscribe to my channel. Also, if you'd like to support my channel, go check out my eBay store. I'll leave a link down in the video description below. Thank you very much guys. Bye bye.